An ordinary morning turned my entire life into a before and an after.
I never imagined that an ordinary morning could split my life into a clear before and after. But the quiet inside the house that day felt wrong in a way I couldn't explain. It wasn't the absence of sound. It was the absence of life, of the familiar hum that had become the backdrop to my existence. The clock on the wall sounded louder than usual, each tick landing like a tiny hammer, a warning I was too slow to understand. I just sat there at the kitchen table, staring at a cup of cold coffee, my mind replaying a long list of excuses I had accepted without question for far too long. He's working late, she's just a friend, you're overthinking it. It's amazing how routine can hide betrayal so much better than chaos ever could. Chaos makes you look for danger, but routine makes you feel safe, even when the foundation is crumbling beneath your feet. That day, the routine broke. The truth didn't arrive with a dramatic confession or a screaming match. It came with a sight, a single, silent image that stole the air from my lungs and burned itself into my memory. It was so simple, so mundane in its cruelty, that it felt surreal. Years of shared history, inside jokes, struggles we'd overcome together, it all collapsed in that one single, silent moment. I understood then that no word spoken afterward, no apology, no explanation, could ever undo what had already been seen. The damage wasn't in the act itself, but in the deliberate deception that led to it. What shocked me most wasn't the betrayal. It was how quickly familiarity turned into indifference once secrecy was exposed. The person I had built a life with looked at me not with guilt or remorse, but with a chilling emptiness, as if I were a stranger who had stumbled into the wrong room. That look, more than anything else, was the final blow. I felt a hot surge of anger rise in my chest, a primal scream wanting to break free. But it didn't control me. Instead, a strange clarity took over, calm and sharp, like a survival instinct kicking in and replacing raw emotion. I knew in that instant that reacting loudly, screaming or crying, would only give power back to the people who had just stolen it from me. It would make me the hysterical one, the one who was overreacting. It would turn their betrayal into my drama. No, silence, planning, and precision, those became my shield. My first move wasn't to confront them. It was to reach out to family. Not for comfort, not to be told everything would be okay, but for the truth to be witnessed. Lies thrive in isolation, and I refused to carry this one alone. I needed people who had known her, loved her, and trusted her to see what I had seen. Watching the denial crumble in the eyes of her own parents, the confusion turning to hurt, was painful. It was a pain I didn't wish on them, but it was necessary. The truth was no longer mine to protect or to hide. It was out, a fact that now belonged to everyone it touched. What followed was not violence or shouting. It was consequences unfolding exactly where they would hurt the most. Not through my actions, but through the simple, unwavering presence of the truth. Comfort vanished, illusions collapsed. People who believed they were untouchable, shielded by their own secrets and lies, learned just how fragile borrowed security really is. The life they had carefully constructed started to unravel, not because I pulled a single thread, but because the entire fabric was woven with deceit. I didn't take joy in watching it happen, but I didn't stop it either. Justice doesn't always require cruelty. Sometimes it only requires honesty and the resolve to stand by it. The truth, once released, has its own momentum. In the aftermath, the house felt empty but lighter, like a storm had finally passed, leaving the air clean but cold and unfamiliar. I walked through the rooms, each one filled with memories, and I understood that memories don't just disappear because trust does. The ghost of a laugh in the living room, the echo of a late-night conversation in the kitchen, they were still there. But I made a choice not to drown in them. I chose to move forward. The past could be a place I visited, but it would no longer be a place I lived. There were conversations later, of course. Apologies shaped by fear of loss rather than genuine remorse. Promises made far too late to matter. I listened to it all without anger, because anger no longer served me. It was a fuel that had burned out, leaving behind not emptiness, but a calm resolve. Closure didn't come from forgiving them. Forgiveness felt like a gift they hadn't earned. Closure came from acceptance. Acceptance that some doors must remain closed to protect what is left of yourself. Acceptance that some people are only sorry they got caught. Rebuilding my life didn't happen overnight. It came in small, steady steps, supported by the few people who prove that true loyalty still exists, especially when it isn't demanded. It came from rediscovering my own strength, a strength I hadn't realized I possessed until I had no other choice but to use it. I learned that a betrayal of this magnitude doesn't have to be the end of your story unless you let it define you. Sometimes it's the catalyst that forces you to reclaim the parts of yourself you gave away too easily in the name of love or comfort. I don't call what I did revenge. Revenge is an emotional act. It seeks to inflict pain for pain's sake. What I chose was balance. What I chose was truth and dignity. The people who thought they had won in that moment actually lost far more than they could ever understand. They lost their integrity, their relationships, their self-respect. Not because I destroyed them, but because I refused to be destroyed by them. I simply held up a mirror, and they shattered themselves against their own reflection. In the end, the most unthinkable thing was not what I witnessed that day. It was what I became afterward. I became someone who no longer mistakes silence for weakness, loyalty for obligation, or love for blindness. That transformation, that hard-won clarity, is something no betrayal could ever take away from me. It became my armor, my strength, and my new beginning. Thank you for listening. If you've ever faced something similar, remember that your story doesn't end where the pain begins. It begins where you decide to stand up. Do not forget to like and subscribe for more stories about resilience and finding strength in the hardest moments.